All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. So as usual, we are going to start with some announcements, followed by the recommended reading, followed by our affirmation of the day. Then we'll have an opportunity for people to introduce themselves or share any victories or celebrations from the past week. Then we will listen to an audiobook excerpt from my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. Come back for our topic discussion. Take a break at about 8:15. And after returning, we'll work on our assignment, do some Q&A, and then wrap it up by 9 o'clock. A reminder that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and or mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Bigger Than You Think You Are, author-signed paperbacks. Use the discount code WORKSHOP20 at checkout. This is the first edition. I do have a few copies left. You can get your copy at BeBiggerToday.com/book, and I will sign that personally for you. And while you're there, check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes. This is a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. We each have our own unique take on the landmarks and skyline that make the Big Apple so great. So check it out at my website, BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. That book is on sale for $16.95, and I will sign that for you as well. All right, so the audiobook for the second edition of Be Bigger Than You Think You Are is available for pre-order at $9.99, only for a couple more weeks. I hope to have this done by June, first week in June. It's actually 595 minutes, which is almost 10 hours, and it comes with a full money-back guarantee. If you don't love it, you let me know, and I'll send your money back. And but I know you're going to love it. So check it out at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. And while you're there, check out hats and T-shirts with the Be Bigger merch. You can save 20% using the discount code MERCH20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. You can also find some of my original art and photography there, my landscape, cityscape, and abstract images. These are professionally framed, gallery-wrapped canvas prints, and I have a little commercial for you guys. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. Okay. And you can also check out my New York City refrigerator magnets. This is part of my original series of New York City souvenirs with my original photos. There are 11 photos, 11 magnets in this collection. You can find them at BeBiggerToday.com/merch, top quality refrigerator magnets. And as some of you know, there is a story behind these magnets as well as all my New York City souvenirs, and we'll talk about that when we get to Chapter 7, when we talk about forgiveness. Also, my latest podcast is available. This was an interview that I did with Richard Dugan. Richard has been interviewing people. He's had his own radio show and now podcast series for probably close to 25 years. Great guy. We had a great conversation. You can go to my website, BeBiggerToday.com, and on the homepage you will see this photo. Click on it and it will take you to the YouTube version of the podcast. I'm available for one-on-one coaching and or corporate consulting. If you're a creative person, or a photographer, or an artist, or a writer, Or if you have a business or work for a business and like me to come in and speak to your management team, your sales team on how they could be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website and we'll set that up. And I am accepting donations in order to continue to offer the workshop at no charge and keep it open to everyone. I am accepting donations, a suggested donation of $5 per week or $20 per month. You can send your contribution to me via PayPal at paypal.me/Peter Alessandria. Thanks so much for your support. All right, so let's kick off the workshop with our recommended reading for tonight. Now, a few weeks ago I mentioned, so the recommended reading for this week is The Secret of the Shadow, The Power of Owning Your Own Story by Debbie Ford. Now, a few weeks ago I mentioned Debbie Ford's first book, which is called Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And unfortunately, Debbie passed away, I think it was in 2012. But you can find out more information about her. I think there's some videos and some other information on her website at debbieford.com. This is a great book, as is The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And the publisher's blurb on this book is as follows. Debbie deepens our shadow work and shows how our shadow side holds the key to our happiness. Each of us has a shadow that whispers stories of our own self-defeating fears to us. For example, that we aren't enough, that we're unworthy of being loved, etc. Debbie guides us to hear those stories and find the positive message within each of them. She shows how understanding our own shadow side can lead us to lives of tremendous fulfillment and peace. Full of case studies and exercises, this book complements her first book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. So again, the thing I love about Debbie's books and her work is she really brings to light, no pun intended, that the fact that the dark side of our personality, the side of ourselves that many of us reject or push away or disown or judge ourselves for. Remember, we've been talking about the ego and we've been talking about judgment. And we've been talking a lot about judging other people, but we judge ourselves, many of us, actually I'll speak for myself. I judge myself more than I judge other people. And my judgment of myself can be very harsh at times, very critical. And basically what Debbie says we do, and in my experience this is true, is we disown certain parts of our personality that we judge as unworthy, as unattractive, as somehow making us less valuable, less lovable, and so on. And it's Debbie's position, and I have to agree with her, that those parts of our personality, those character traits, those personality characteristics, they have a gift for us. There's something in that part of us that is a blessing. And so her work, and I think to a certain extent some of the stuff that I talk about in my book, is about beginning to own that part of ourselves that we've previously disowned. And that's another way of saying to love that part of ourselves that we previously cast out or pushed away. The stuff that we judge ourselves for, that we make ourselves wrong for, that we crucify ourselves for in some cases. So it's Debbie's position, and again, I have to agree with her on this. You know, there's often a gift that's hidden there. So her book is great, both her books are great, to help begin to excavate all that buried stuff that we don't like about ourselves, bring it into the light, and then heal it. And the Greek or the Latin derivation of the word heal is to make whole. And the way we make whole is to integrate all parts of us, to integrate even the stuff that we think makes us unlovable, that we think makes us unworthy and all of that. By integrating that, by bringing that in, we find the gifts that are hidden there. So I highly recommend Debbie's both her books, The Secret of the Shadow and Dark Side of the Light Chasers. All right, and for the affirmation of the day, this is one of my favorites again. I can change how I see myself, and when I do, my whole life will change. Now, this has been a theme since the beginning of these workshops, and it's certainly a recurring theme in my book. And it's going to be part of the conversation, part of the discussion tonight. So the first part of it is I can change how I see myself. And honestly, that's the first hurdle for most of us. Certainly was the first hurdle for me, because I didn't think I could change who I was. I didn't think I could change how I saw myself, because I thought who I was a function of my past, was a function of my past experiences, of my childhood, of it was a function of what happened to me, and there was nothing that I could really do about that. And I would say things like, well, that's just the way I am, or I'll never change, or you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I was convinced that I was the way I was, and that there was very little that I could do to affect real change in my life. So my position, again, I've said this many times, is it all begins with changing how we see ourselves. And to change how we see ourselves, we have to believe it's possible that we can change. It doesn't matter how old we are or how young we are. We can change, but the way we do that is we change our self-perception, our ideas about ourselves, who we think we are, and we do that by reprogramming. And I've talked a lot about that, how to reprogram our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. And then the second part of the affirmation is, and when I do, my whole life will change. Now again, this is my belief, and I've seen it in myself and I've seen it with other people, is that our life is a function of the choices and decisions that we make. And the choices and decisions that we make are based on the thoughts that we think and the feelings that we feel. And the way it works is our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in our lives. So when I change how I see myself, when I change those thoughts and beliefs about me, especially the ones that are not serving me, then my feelings change, and when my feelings change, my words and actions change, and those words and actions are usually the representation of a choice or decision. And so when I change those choices and decisions, that's when my life changes. And many of us, again, I'll speak for myself, I want my life to change, but I don't want to have to do anything to change. I don't want to be different. I don't want to have to do anything to change. I want you to change, or whoever. I want somebody else to change. I want the economy to change. I want the job market to change. I want my family to change. I want my neighbors to change. I want, whoever. I don't want to change. So I think the way my life is going to be different is if somebody else changes. And I spent many decades doing that, and it hasn't worked. So my belief now is that when I change how I see myself, that's when my life changes. I'm going to give you a specific example from my own life tonight from chapter 6 in the book. I can change how I see myself, and when I do, my whole life will change. All right, so this is the portion of the workshop where people can introduce themselves if you're new, or you can share a victory or celebration from the past week. So if there's anybody who would like to say hi or share a victory, this is your opportunity. Just unmute yourself and take it away. Anybody want to say hello? Cynthia?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Cynthia, and today I completed a letter that I had put off for some years, and it was a letter of completion to say this is how I have completed the tasks required for a certification, and I'm very pleased to have completed that and sent it off. Thank you.
Excellent. Wonderful. That's a woohoo! Good for you. That's great. And if you want to comment, you can. What took you so long to get to that point, do you think?
Oops. I had to let go of a few reservations and to come to acceptance of another person who is as fallible as I am as a human being. It took a while.
All right. Sounds good. I'll take it.
Yep. Self-acceptance
Congratulations.
and acceptance of another. That's what it took.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Anybody else want to say hello or share victory? Dee
Hi,
Dee?
Peter. Hi, Peter. Hi, everybody. Dee here. I noticed, so I did watch the last 2 weeks workshop over again. So that's a victory. Those are really meaty, lots and lots of material in the last 2 weeks. This chapter is almost written for me directly. So thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for walking the walk. I noticed that in a conversation, I had a defensive reaction, and I could have had a curious reaction, an inquiry reaction. So I think my victory would be if I could allow myself, when I feel that fear, which turns to anger pretty quickly for me, so fast I can hardly notice the fear, that I immediately kick in with curiosity and inquiry for myself and for others, and really try to tone down the defensiveness. I think I'll be much better received in my life going forward. I'm going to need a lot of practice, though. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody.
All right, great. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I can say, for me, we talked about this earlier in this chapter, I think, that defensiveness begets defensiveness, anger begets anger. And there's a great workbook lesson in A Course in Miracles that I love, which says, "In my defenselessness, my safety lies." And so try to remember that. It's often easier said than done. But that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to say hi? Share a victory? Great. So let's move on then. So we are still tackling chapter 6. I think we're going to do tonight and then one more next week. And then we'll be moving on to chapter 7. I may have a guest presenter for us in 2 weeks. So between chapters, but that's not confirmed yet. So we are still on chapter 6. Would you rather be right or happy? And so let's jump in. We're going to do the audiobook excerpt for tonight. It's about 12 and a half minutes, and then I'll come back and we'll do the topic discussion and go from there. So hang on for that. Won't you be my neighbor? Judgment is a good lead-in to the next little anecdote from my own life. I mentioned in the introduction that during the past 30 years or so, I've been on sort of a journey of self-discovery. At a certain point, I became aware that the same types of problems and issues were recurring in my life. One particular issue that's plagued me over much of that time has to do with neighbors. Whether it's loud TVs or music, noisy parties or family events, blocking my parking space, or, my favorite, cooking odors, I always seemed to be challenged by the people who lived in close proximity to me. I'll describe the specifics of these conflicts in a minute, but let me say up front that while the other people may or may not have had a part in what transpired, my reactions were always about me. In particular, it was how I saw myself in those situations that determined how I experienced them. We said earlier the ego thrives on feeling victimized. Well, that's a good way to characterize how I felt when it comes to my living situations for the past 20 years. In general, I saw myself as the innocent victim of other people's inconsideration. My neighbors just did what they did without considering me or my needs. Now, right off the bat, you might see a problem. Technically, I wasn't living in the same space with any of these people, nor did I have any kind of prior relationship or even acquaintance with them. These were all adjoining living situations, either apartments or duplex, subdivided single-family homes. Yet I was assuming at some level they were supposed to be considerate of me and my needs. I justified this by thinking I was so thoughtful and considerate of them. For instance, I always turned down my TV at night. I never had parties or gatherings that would potentially disturb them, and I never cooked smelly food. They, on the other hand, were the inconsiderate monsters who ruined my life, sometimes on a daily basis, with their noise and disgusting cooking habits. Thus, in my mind at least, they should have been considerate of me because I was so considerate of them. Mind you, they never asked me to do any of those things. And until later, I also never directly asked any of them to be more considerate of me. Rather, I just expected them to read my mind and somehow magically know that what they were doing was bothering me. Yes, that's how crazy I was. Without going into all the gory details, the problem spanned 3 different living situations in 2 different states with at least 6 different sets of neighbors. Over the years, my attempts to resolve the issues included everything from let's sit down and work this out meetings, to shouting matches in the driveway, to calling the police in the middle of the night, to contacting the local housing authority to try to get them evicted, to hiring realtors to help me find a new place, and so on. In fact, I tried everything short of a full-blown lawsuit to resolve the issues, but nothing seemed to work. Seeing myself as powerless in this ongoing drama created a lot of stress in my life. Recall we said stress happens when we focus on things we have no control over. In each case, I became obsessed with my neighbors' habits and behaviors. For example, I knew their work schedules, their kids' school schedules, what time they usually ate, when they woke up, when they went to bed, etc. In fact, in a few cases, I was so obsessively over-focused on them, I could tell you, based solely on the sound of their car, when they were driving down the street. One day, one of them got an electric car, and that really messed me up. So as you can see, I was totally focused on them, their habits, and their behaviors, 3 things I had absolutely no control over. Now, I may be insane, but I'm not crazy. I thought I needed to know all this stuff to protect myself. In many cases, because of the nature of the living situation, their actions often had a detrimental effect on me. For instance, as I mentioned in an earlier chapter, in one case, whenever they used their shower or toilet, I lost all my water pressure and temperature. Yes, I spoke to the landlord about it, and they claimed there was nothing they could do. Now, low water pressure may not seem like a big deal, but when it happens often enough that you regularly get out of the shower with shampoo or conditioner stuck in your hair, you start to pay attention to these things. And it did get worse. Things like them damaging my property, starting a fire in the building, and physical violence within their unit occurred. So I felt like I needed to know as much as I could to take care of myself. Yet since I had no control over these things, the result was my feeling stressed. I think most people who know me would consider me a fairly level-headed person. Well, after reading the last few paragraphs, maybe they actually wouldn't. Anyway, when it came to dealing with neighbors, many days I was completely out of my mind. On more than one occasion, I was totally out of control and felt like I was going insane. Now, while it was true I had no control over their behaviors, it was entirely untrue that I had no control over how I reacted to those behaviors. After years of agony, finally one day it hit me. The problem was with how I was seeing myself, not with what they were doing or not doing. This gave me the understanding that my thinking was the true cause of my emotional distress. Thus, I began to look at the question of who I thought I was in the situation differently. We said earlier, a hallmark of the ego is that it takes everything personally. In most of these situations with my neighbors, my mind constantly went there. These inconsiderate people are messing up my life. I'm the innocent party here. They're deliberately attacking me. My landlord doesn't care about me, and so on. Taking things personally led me to see myself as helpless, a victim, unimportant, powerless, etc. This in turn led to me giving the situation a correspondingly disempowering meaning. I'm screwed. I can't do anything about what's happening. I'll never get out of here. Now I just have to suffer. No one cares about me, and so on. Today I can see that in large degree my neighbors' actions had absolutely nothing to do with me. They were just living their lives in a way that felt right to them. Yet at the time I couldn't see this. I took everything they did personally and eventually felt justified in attacking them back. It started out small. For instance, when we passed each other, I would pretend I didn't see them, or if they said hi, I wouldn't return their greeting. As my retaliation progressed, when their mail was erroneously placed in my mailbox, once or twice, or maybe 10 times, I can't really remember, I kind of tossed it in the trash. Before you call the postal police, it was always junk mail. Well, almost always. At times, I'd also sit around thinking about how I could get back at them for making so much noise or cooking stinky food. Once, I Googled how to make a stink bomb so the next time they cooked, I could unleash my own noxious fumes upon their inconsiderate noses. I never actually made the stink bomb, of course. At other times, I was more aggressive. From complaining to the landlord, to banging incessantly on the floor or walls when they were making too much noise, to the aforementioned calling the police or housing department, I wasn't shy in letting them know of my displeasure. I even went so far once as to buy a mini home theater surround sound system. I placed it against the common wall and tried to blast them out in the middle of the night. I say tried because I turned up the volume so high it blew up within 20 seconds and was thereafter useless. I felt like a fool, but luckily the store gave me my money back the next day. A particularly dark incident occurred when I confronted them about blocking my driveway. Now, as I've said, I'm not a confrontational person. Yet never in a million years could I imagine being so inconsiderate as to block someone else's parking space. When I saw what they had done, my rage boiled over and the situation quickly escalated. We almost came to blows. Needless to say, at times like this, my ego and its associated negative thinking definitely got the best of me. Of course, I had no idea the problem was with me. I was certain they were the cause of all my woes. Looking back, I can see I felt really crazy when I was doing some of these things. It was like I had become someone else. That's a good way to know when we're operating via the ego, by the way. We don't feel like our normal selves. Now, speaking of insanity, there was something else that happened several times which completely surprised and shocked me. When I confronted them about their misdeeds, instead of being met with an apology and regret for having disturbed me, I was met with an equal or greater dose of their anger. They were as hostile towards me as I was towards them. We said earlier, defensiveness begets defensiveness and anger begets anger. I was so certain I was right and they were wrong, I expected a contrite and remorseful response from them. When they replied with their own rage, it blew my mind. I simply couldn't believe they could be upset with me. Wasn't it obvious that I was the victim here? How could they possibly feel victimized by me? And yet it turns out that's exactly how they felt. This is a perfect example of how the ego, self-centered to the extreme, is completely void of empathy for others. When we're identifying with our ego, we lose our ability to see someone else's point of view. At a certain point, despite all the craziness and insanity, I realized I had to look at myself. The faces and places were different, yet the problems were always the same. It soon became difficult to deny that the common denominator was me. Once I was willing to consider that I was at least part of the problem, I could begin to look for a solution. That solution eventually came through discovering and then applying the principles we've been discussing in this book. In particular, it was about me taking responsibility, exercising my true power, and then choosing forgiveness. With respect to this last point, I'll say the more I'm willing to forgive myself and others, the more things change for the better in my life. Issues that never got resolved through confrontation or aggression, or passive aggression, hey, it was only a few pieces of junk mail, seem to take care of themselves when I apply forgiveness. The result is I'm not hyper-focused on what other people are doing or not doing, and I'm rarely upset with anyone anymore, including my neighbors. Just don't block my driveway. Don't ever do that. As we'll see in the next chapter, the thing that's so important about forgiveness is, perhaps not surprisingly, I have to see myself differently to do it. To truly forgive someone, I can no longer see myself as powerless or a victim or whatever. I have to change my self-image for the better to do it, and this is always a good thing for me. The final thing I'll say about the neighbor situation is that for the longest time, I resisted getting to know any of them personally. I was keen on maintaining that sense of separation that is the lifeblood of the ego. Even when I had opportunities to put my grievances on hold and interact or socialize with them, I didn't. I was adamant they were bad, and I was better than they were. This distance and separation allowed me to continue to hate and blame them for my unhappiness. So with my current neighbors, I've attempted to do things differently. I've taken some time to get to know them, at least a little. I've been more friendly and interacted with them on occasion. I also always say hello and inquire about their lives. I've even offered to be helpful a few times. They've reciprocated, and things between us have been decidedly different than they would have been in the past. Whether with neighbors or anyone else we'd consider strangers in our lives, it's clear that it's harder to hate them when we get to know them personally. Holding someone at arm's length is our ego's way of keeping the conflict going. So by letting go of my judgment and attempting to get to know my current neighbors better, I'm undoing the hold my ego has had on this area of my life, and things have changed accordingly. The biggest thing I've found is that my neighbors are regular people just living their lives the best they can. They're pretty nice and are actually willing to go out of their way, at least a little, to accommodate me. I see we have much more in common than I would have thought. And instead of yelling and screaming and banging on walls, all I had to do was ask them nicely. Who knew? It's not all perfect,
but it's way better than it's ever been. They're simply trying to take care of themselves and do what they need to do to survive. Just like me. Just like me. That's something the ego would never say.
All right, so we are back. That was tonight's audiobook excerpt from Chapter 6 of Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. And so we have been talking about, in this chapter and for the last few weeks, we've been talking about this thing called the ego. And I want to recap a little bit about what we've discussed. Many of you may be familiar with Freud and Carl Jung. They talked about the ego. This is a little different. More recently, Eckhart Tolle speaks a lot about the ego, and in particular, my favorite resource for all things egotistic is, or the egoic mind, is A Course in Miracles. So I highly recommend either Eckhart Tolle's work or A Course in Miracles if you want more information to delve a little deeper. Again, to recap a little bit, you know, the egoic mind is the fear-based part of our personality. It's the part of our mind that's, well, A Course in Miracles says the ego ranges from suspiciousness at best to viciousness at worst. And it's the part of our personality, of our mind, that is always looking for conflict, feels slighted by other people, feels offended, takes things personally, feels justified in attacking other people for what they've done. You know, it's driven by conflict, by drama. It's also the part of us that feels superior to other people. You know, we're better than, and in alignment with the title of this chapter, always thinks that it's right. So it's the part of us that always thinks we're right and somebody else is wrong, thinks we're better than other people, yet at the same time is shackled with this insecurity and self-doubt. And then takes everything personally, thrives on conflict and drama, and feels justified in attacking other people. And basically blaming everybody else for how we feel. Now, the example that I gave tonight from the audiobook, Chapter 6 in the book, is, you know, conflicts, challenges I've had with neighbors over the years. But it could be anybody. You know, for you guys, it might be coworkers, it could be a boss, could be family members, spouse, children, in-laws. Wherever there's conflict, acute conflict, ongoing drama, feelings of being justified in attacking, taking things personally, feeling offended, that's the ego. And so it doesn't really matter what relationship it is. What matters is how we are reacting to that relationship. So I'm flagging all of this so we can all become more aware of when we're operating from our egoic mind. Now, you know, arguably there's some evolutionary value to this, you know, to be suspicious, to be on guard, to fight it when we need to for our survival. But again, as I mentioned elsewhere in the book, I think at this point, this egoic mind that we have probably hurts us more than helps us. And, you know, with the level of, you know, weapon proliferation and all of that, you know, we don't have as much leeway anymore in terms of engaging in conflict and drama with other races, with other nations, or even with our own neighbors. So let's look at the first slide for tonight. So again, this is a little reminiscent of the affirmation for tonight. And this is the theme. This is the main theme of my book. This is the main theme that we've been talking about for 30-something weeks now in terms of the workshop. It's how we see ourselves, who we think we are, that determines how we respond or react in all situations and to all people. And again, the reason I'm emphasizing this is that when we're in our egoic mind, you know, when I'm in my egoic mind, and again, the example I gave with my living situation with neighbors, I'm convinced that it's their fault that I feel the way I feel. I'm convinced it's what somebody else is doing or not doing that's making me feel the way I feel and react the way I react and the choices and decisions that I make. And it's also how I feel justified in getting back, getting even, because they did it to me first. That's, guys, that's ego 101. You know, the minute I feel justified in attacking back, getting even, because they did it to me first. Now, we talked about, you know, beginning in chapter 1 and chapter 2, nobody makes us feel anything. Okay? We're always and only choosing our own thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. It looks like somebody else is making us think the way we think, feel the way we feel, or say or do the things that we do. But the truth is, we're always choosing. Now, we're often doing it habitually or in a conditioned way. We're not conscious, and that's why I talked about the difference between responding and reacting. Responding and reacting. But it doesn't change the fact that we're choosing, that we're making that internal decision based on who we think we are in that situation. We're always reacting to our subjective interpretation of the situation based on who we think we are. We're not actually reacting to what's going on around us. Now, why is that important? Well, if the situation is not causing me to feel the way I feel, or think the way I think, or say the things I say or do, then that means when I change how I see myself, when I change who I think I am in that situation, then I will have a different response. And hopefully have a better response. Hopefully have a peaceful interaction with other people rather than conflict and drama, pointing fingers, making other people wrong, blaming other people, and reacting from that place of defensiveness, anger, justified attack, and all of that. So I want to get us thinking, I want to get us aware, I want to get us more in the moment so we're conscious that when those feelings come up of justified anger, of being offended, of taking things personally, that's the red flag. And so that's the opportunity to begin to see ourselves differently, to begin to reprogram. Now, I'm a big believer in, advanced intentions. If I know I'm going to have a difficult situation coming up, a difficult meeting or interaction with another person or situation, it's very helpful to plan in advance how I want to see myself in that situation, how I want to react, how I want to act, how I want to react, what I want to think, what I want to feel, what I want to say, and what I want to do, and in particular, how I want to see myself in that situation. So we take our power back, because when I'm blaming other people for how I feel, I'm giving my power away. Remember, we talked about power. True power is the ability to consciously choose and or change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So when I'm reacting rather than responding, when I'm in the egoic mind, I'm not consciously, and I'm giving my power away. I'm basically saying, you're responsible for how I feel. I'm not responsible for how I feel. And that's when I give my power away. All right, so the ego takes everything personally. This means that we make what other people do about us self-centered to the extreme. The ego is completely void of empathy for others. The result is we lose our ability to see someone else's point of view. Again, this is a key part of the egoic mindset, which is this belief in separation, which is this idea that, again, other people make us feel the way we do, think, feel, say, and do the things we do. But it also removes us from empathy, from being able to relate with compassion. That's how I define empathy. Being able to relate to others with compassion. When we're in our egoic mind, it's very difficult to see somebody else's point of view. It's very difficult to have compassion for other people's challenges in life or issues or whatever. And it always causes us to see the worst in other people. And ultimately to see the worst in ourselves. Because again, as A Course in Miracles says, as I see other people, I will see myself. So seeing the worst in others, being suspicious, being defensive, feeling justified in attacking, all of that leads to us doing things to other people that we would never want done to us. It allows nations and races to do things to other nations and races that, are atrocities, that are inhumane in many ways, because we've cut ourselves off from any kind of empathy, compassion, understanding for that other person. We've judged them as less than, we've judged them as wrong, we've judged them as bad, as guilty. Remember, the last 2 weeks, we talked all about judgment. And once we judge them, then we have the right to do whatever we have to do to them for retribution, for revenge, and all of that, retaliation. Now, again, we see this play out at the level of nation states and all of that, but this can also happen in our own living room or kitchen at night with our own family. The passive-aggressive behaviors, attacking other people in our own family, verbally, physically. All of that comes from this egoic mindset. So it operates at all levels, of society, all levels of our lives. So this is why I'm saying we want to be really conscious of this. We want to be aware of it. And again, this idea that we lose empathy for other people, we lose the ability to see somebody else's point of view, and then when we're surprised when they retaliate, when they attack us back. The example I gave in the reading tonight was being surprised when I found out my neighbors were just as angry at me as I was at them. It was like I couldn't believe it. How could they be upset with me? Wasn't I the victim? Weren't they responsible for how I was feeling? And yet they felt just as victimized by me as I did by them. And I had it was a shock. I was so surprised. And it happened again and again and again. And finally I had to take notice. So empathy, seeing somebody else's point of view. And again, I have had to change who I am. Now, I want to be really clear about this. I still have to take care of myself. In my current living situation, there are still challenges. And as far as I'm concerned, there has been some inappropriate behavior, breaking agreements, breaking boundaries. So I still have to take care of myself, or I still have the opportunity to take care of myself without being angry, without feeling justified in attacking, without the whole egoic mindset. And so that's the trick. That's the key. How can I take care of myself without anger, without revenge, without retaliation, without wanting to make somebody wrong, feeling better than, feeling superior, and all of that. And I'm telling you guys, it ain't easy. I'm still challenged on a pretty regular basis by my current situation. So this is an ongoing thing for me. I have come a long way. I'm more willing to see that how I feel is always about me. It doesn't matter what they're doing or not doing. My response, my internal thoughts, feelings, words, and actions are always about me, and are always about how I see myself. And as I said in the book tonight, in the audiobook, most of the time I've seen myself in this situation as a victim, as powerless, looking for somebody else to save me, somebody else to fight my battles for me, because I didn't think I could take care of myself. I didn't think I had what it took to stand up for myself in any way, much less in a healthy, functional way. And so I created a lot of my own misery in this situation. And I also had a very distorted view of reality because of how I saw myself. I really, really, really get now that I've been operating like I was a little kid, like a little 5-year-old kid who had no protection, who had nobody to stand up for him, who had no way to take care of himself, and all of that. And so I reacted accordingly as a result of that. So the problem is not the situation. The problem is always and only how I see myself in that situation. Now, I have taken steps to take care of myself in a way that I haven't done before, and we'll see how things play out. But, it has been very important for me to begin to take responsibility for my own feelings, and as a result, my own words and actions in every area of my life, not just in my living situation. All right, and so then to come back to that last point about empathy and compassion, the reality is that I see that now, I've made other people monsters, I've made other people victimizers, I've created this idea in my mind that, they're somehow inhuman or whatever, terrible people. And I see now that's all just a product of my egoic thinking, of the ego. And so I've begun to recognize that in my situation in particular, the people who challenge me in my life, when I look beyond my initial judgments, when I begin to take responsibility for how I feel, for my own feelings, and I begin to look at my part in the situation, because I do have a part, regardless of what somebody else is doing or not doing, I have a part in every situation that I'm involved in. I begin to see that, a lot of that stuff, the ideas that I have, is all made up in my own mind. And to a large degree, they're people just like me. Again, whoever it is, whether it's my neighbors, whether it's people I work with, whoever. People on the highway, I've had many challenges, dealing with traffic and stuff like that, aggressive driving, road rage over the years. And to the extent that I can begin to say, they're just like me. They've got issues, they've got challenges, just like we all do. In the next chapter, I'm going to quote from, I think it was Socrates or Plato, who said, "Be kind, for everyone is fighting the same hard battle." We all have, for the most part, many of the same challenges. We all have, for the most part, a similar mindset. I said in chapter 4, when we talked about moving from FEAR to LOVE, I talked about those two core questions that most of us face in our lives. Am I safe? Am I loved? I have yet to meet somebody, and I've met a lot of people in my life, who doesn't have at least some of one or both of those going on. So by beginning to see myself as the same as other people, as having similar issues, similar concerns, living often in a place of fear or uncertainty or self-doubt, then I can begin to have more empathy and compassion. I still take care of myself. I'm not making excuses for somebody else's inappropriate or abusive behavior. We never, ever have to stand for somebody else's abuse or unloving behavior towards us. We can do whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves. And I can begin to see other people with more compassion, with more understanding, and more empathy. And that changes the interaction, and it changes the results, in my experience. All right, so let's take a look at the exercise for tonight. And again, the thing that, where this exercise comes from was, keeping people at arm's length, all right, it serves a purpose. Again, the ego is all about separation. So keeping other people at arm's length, it serves a purpose in keeping the conflict going, keeping the separation going. So what I'm saying here, the exercise for tonight, was give an example of how getting to know someone better changed what may have been an initial or ongoing negative judgment of them for the better. So again, as I got to know my neighbors better, I had more compassion and understanding, and I went from having a really negative judgment to having more understanding and compassion and seeing them differently. Here's the key, guys. The only way I can see other people differently is if I see myself differently. Now remember that, because that's going to be a big theme when we get to chapter 7, when we talk about forgiveness. I can't really forgive if I still see myself as powerless, as a victim, as threatened, as vulnerable. Again, there may be real threats, there may be really inappropriate behavior coming from another person. We're not talking about condoning that or making excuses for that. And how I see myself will determine how I respond to that. And what I found is that I'm a lot more capable than I thought I was at taking care of myself in situations like that. But until I change my idea about myself, until I see myself differently, none of that is going to change. And when I see myself differently, I see other people differently. As I change how I see myself, I change how I see the world. Okay, so we're going to do, this is the assignment for tonight. We're going to do this when we come back. What we're going to do is take a 5-minute break. I'm going to play the song. For people watching after the fact on YouTube, the song is Love My Life by Robbie Williams. The lyrics will be on screen. I can't actually play the song because of copyright issues, but you can find a copy on iTunes or wherever you get music. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, we're back. All right, so we're going to look at our assignment for tonight. And I want to hear what you guys have to say on giving some examples of how when you get to know somebody better, see again, the ego's MO is to keep people at arm's distance and then to judge them as unworthy, not good enough, we're better than they are. That becomes our justification for keeping the conflict going and for feeling victimized and for feeling hurt and for feeling resentful. So give an example of how, and the example I gave tonight was getting to know my neighbors better. Give an example from your own life of how by getting to know somebody better, it changed your initial negative judgment for the better. And, or, something similar, something from the discussion for tonight. How maybe in your own life, keeping somebody at arm's length or taking things personally when it really wasn't personal, or feeling justified in getting even or getting revenge, how that affected relationships. Because what we're talking about here is how we can improve our relationships with ourselves and with other people. And again, I see it in my own life. The ego operates at all levels, whether again it's with family or friends or strangers or, at the grocery store or at, wherever I am, the judgment can kick in. There's something, taking things personally, feeling offended, wanting to blame somebody else for how I'm feeling, and all of that. And maybe even feeling justified in getting even. I can get upset the way, the 16-year-old kid at the grocery store bags my groceries. I used to come home and be so resentful of how they could put the eggs and the tomatoes in with the canned goods. It was like, now maybe that's not an appropriate way to bag the groceries, but the point is I would get upset about it and feel resentful and feel justified in, judging them and all of that. And that doesn't serve me. And I would keep all that anger inside. It's not even like I would go back and complain or something. I would just feel victimized by the 16-year-old grocery store clerk, because that's the level of my thinking. That when the ego is in charge of our thinking, we're always looking for something to be angry about. And I said at the very beginning of this chapter, chapter 6, anger is the primary egoic reaction. All right, so anger, resentment, feeling offended, taking things personally, feeling better than, feeling justified in getting even. It's all ego 101. All right, so what do you guys have to say? Anybody want to chime in on any of this? Share a little bit of your own experience?
I'll say something.
Go ahead, Didi.
Hi. Yeah, I think this is the hardest stuff for Didi. So if I could have a prayer for myself, it would be that what was my defenselessness, that I could make friends and make love with defenselessness. And I don't know, that I guess that I would be feeling enough safe. What's the question? Am I safe and am I loved? That I would feel safe enough and loved enough that I could detach from whatever anybody else was doing and not take any of it personally. I really think that would be a much better way to operate. I can give a mini example. I was taking my client to lunch to her friend's house. It was really fancy. They're all doctors. In Madison Park, which is a high end, right on the water, Lake Washington. And my client was very upset. And instead of just saying, wow, you're so upset, I took it personally and I said, well, if you want me to join you, you need to stop that behavior. I really took her to the carpet. And lucky for me, she did, because I was going to walk out. but I could have just said, wow, you're so upset, and just really let her have her upsetness to whatever degree she wanted to. Anyway, I don't know if that's on track or not, but this is really good material for me, Peter. Thanks for bringing it all to us.
Great. Thank you, Dee Dee. So I would say that's great. I mean, what I heard was setting a boundary. And so we're going to talk a lot more about how to set boundaries in the next chapter. But it's okay to, it's okay to point out, it's okay to take care of ourselves. It's okay to set boundaries with other people if somebody really is acting inappropriately. And ultimately, and this is really for any parents out there, and this is the hardest thing in the world. And honestly, I'm so glad I'm not a parent. I have 8 nieces and nephews, and I have nothing but empathy for my siblings and for the kids. It's the hardest thing in the world. How to set a boundary with a child without making the child wrong. How to set limits on behavior, how to contain energetic kids, especially young kids, without diminishing their self-esteem, without blaming them for how we feel, without directing anger towards them. Because a lot of times what I see this in my own life, especially when I was a kid, I would get yelled at for something and it just kind of came out of left field because I was just having fun. I was just doing whatever I was doing. I was totally engrossed in what I was doing. And then I was being attacked from my perspective, and it felt really bad. And I was told I was bad. I was told I was wrong. I was told that I was making somebody else feel upset. And that's the foundation, that the best I can tell, that was the foundation of codependency for me, being told that I'm responsible for how somebody else is feeling, especially in a negative way. And I didn't know. I was a little kid, and I believed that. And I internalized all that, and I created a self-image based on that there was something about me that was upsetting to other people. So again, to come back to what Dee Dee was saying, it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to do whatever we need to do if somebody really is acting inappropriately. And is there a way to do that without taking things personally, without directing anger towards them, without, retaliating, without defensiveness and all that? And that's a challenge, and it's not always easy. And so the next thing is, can I forgive myself? Because I do this with my nieces and nephews, and I wrote the book, and I wrote the damn book, and I'm still challenged by this stuff, how to not lash out, and remembering again that fear precedes anger. So I had a situation 2 nights ago. I took my 7-year-old niece and nephew out for ice cream, and I was parked on across the street, and I said, both of them, I was locking the front door, and they were running off. I said, "Don't go in the street." And of course, one of them ran right into the street across the street. Now it's a parking area. It's not actually, there's no traffic really. And he said, I looked both ways, and I was upset, and I could see I was afraid. And I responded better than I might have in the past, but I was very direct with him, and I said, I didn't say look both ways. I said, don't go in the street. And I could see it kind of shut him down for a moment, and he thought he was doing the right thing. And luckily it didn't escalate. I caught myself, and I think I got my message across, and next time I'll know to be more, especially with him, I may have to, actually make sure I'm ahead of him. Very energetic kid. Brilliant, beautiful kid. Love him. See so much of myself in him. But it was a moment, and I realized, wow, so if I'm reacting, I was clearly afraid for his safety, his well-being, and it quickly morphed into anger. And then I noticed his reaction, and it shut him down. And it's another, and if that happens, if that happens a dozen times a week, and in some cases, for some of us, it happened a dozen times a day, it takes down our self-esteem, it takes down our sense of self. I'm bad, so-and-so, my uncle is upset with me. That must mean that it's my fault, that I did something wrong, I'm bad. And that's the thought process of a 7-year-old. I mean, these kids still believe in Santa Claus. So the idea that I did something wrong, I'm bad, that becomes part of our identity. That becomes part of our self-image. At least it did for me, and that formed the basis of my self-image for many, 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 many years. And I wasn't even aware that that's what was running my life. So that's what I'm talking about. So can we set boundaries? Can we take care of ourselves? Can we take care of other people? Because sometimes other people are doing things, especially kids, that may end up hurting themselves or others. So is there a way to take care of ourselves, take care of them without that anger, without, with compassion, with empathy, setting healthy boundaries in a way that affirms the relationship, that affirms the other person, while also taking care of us. All right? Again, I've said this 10 times tonight, I'm going to say it one more time. We never, ever have to put ourselves in harm's way with inappropriate people or inappropriate behavior. And once we learn see what's really going on, we can begin to handle those situations and those people differently, with sometimes miraculous results. All right. I get so serious sometimes. Who else? Who else wants to chime in on our topic for tonight?
Hello.
There you are.
Get my mask off my ear. The example at the beginning was an example of all of this, in that I let go of some old frustrations and upsets of having another person see me as themselves and me see that other person as myself. And as I let go of that, then I was able to write the letter that I needed to write to in a professional way. But I still have a mother that's 97 years old. And my mother says things to me that I'm certain, I believe, are things she has always said to me. But I internalized them before. And now I'm holding them as, well, I don't have to take this personally. She is just stating her opinion, and her opinion does not match mine. Isn't that interesting? And as I do that more, I'm able to be with her in more comfortable, more accepting ways, and to not accept her negativity as about me, even though she speaks it as though it's fact. This is about you. And then for me to learn to be kinder with others as well, that I need not be so directive and outspoken and speak my opinion so much with other people, that maybe they can just be how they are, however that is, until they ask me for suggestions, or ask me for my opinion, or ask me for my professional expertise. So that would make the world a quieter place for me. Thank you for letting me share.
All right, great. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, that's great. And I will say, parents, it's tough, man, when we're, dealing with parents. I've said things like that to my mom, where it's like, oh, so that's your opinion. Thank you for sharing that. Instead of in the past, it would have been like, how could you say that, And the other thing for me is just recognizing that when we make negative comments, it's almost always we're talking about ourselves. We're not really talking about the other person. And that's true of other people directing negative comments towards us, but it's also true of me directing negative comments, even in my own mind, even if I don't actually say them out loud, that the judgment and all the other stuff, it's really about me. Because the more I love myself, the more I accept myself, the more I forgive myself, the less I need to correct other people, the less I need to judge other people. Remember, we talked about judgment as a defense mechanism or as a survival strategy. If I judge you, then I don't have to get close to you because I'm saying you're unworthy of my love, you're unworthy of my time. And if I don't have to get close to you, then I don't have to worry about being hurt by you. So it's judgment is this defense mechanism. It's a way we stay safe, but it seems like we're just really, condemning somebody else because they're jerks or idiots, or we don't like the way they dress or where they live or how they walk or how they talk or what they eat or what they don't eat or whatever. We have a whole list of things that we judge other people for. But what we're really saying is, I'm afraid of you, and the only way I know how to keep myself safe in this situation is to make you wrong for who you are so I don't have to get close to you, and then I don't risk being hurt by you. Anybody else? Laura, did you want to chime in?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, great topic. And I find relationships are just about one of the hardest hurdles in life. And never stop learning when it comes to relationships. And I'm looking forward to the next topic of boundaries. I find whenever I assert myself and state a boundary or state a boundary, that then I have anxiety and I feel bad. It creates a whole slew of self-doubt, if you will. So I'm looking forward to that. And I got on a bit late. I apologize, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Laura. Glad you're here. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I totally relate. This is coming up for me right now, setting boundaries and feeling anxious about it, feeling afraid, standing up for myself, huge challenge for me. And I notice that I often feel guilty when I take care of myself. And I start to worry more about the other person than I worry about myself.
Yes. Yes.
And that creates more anxiety, more resentment. And maybe the people in our lives who challenge us in that way are actually doing us a favor. They're giving us an opportunity to learn how to exercise those muscles of taking care of ourselves. Because once I cross that hurdle, I don't walk around with the same anxiety, but I have to walk through the fear. So in the next chapter, in chapter 7, you're going to hear a whole story. I have another story, and this was dealing with a legal client when I was an attorney. And, this guy, he taught me so much about healthy boundaries. And what he gave me was the opportunity to experience myself differently by standing up for myself in a way that was not defensive, that was not attacking, but I set a very clear boundary and stood up for myself. And that transformed me in many ways, So it's having the experience of standing up for ourselves in a healthy way. It's how we see ourselves differently. It's one thing to have an idea in my head about who I want to be in this situation. It's another thing to actually be that in the situation with the other person. But once I do that, now I'm taking it to the whole next level. So anyway, thank you for chiming in, Laura. I appreciate that. I totally get the anxiety and feeling guilty when I take care of myself. You want to say anything else, or you're good?
No, good. Thanks, Peter. Very good. Thank you. Good.
Thank you, Laura. Couple more minutes. Anybody else want to say anything about anything? All right, so I'm going to play the song one more time, 3.5 minutes. We'll come back and do our final goodbyes. All right, so that's it for this week, guys. I want to leave you with this thought. What if everybody feels just the way we do inside? What if other people have the same fears, the same anxiety, the same self-doubt? Now, some people don't know how to express that in a healthy way. Some people do lash out. Some people react rather than respond. But what if, just want to plant this seed, what if pretty much everybody that we encounter on a regular basis or in our lives shares many of those same insecurities, those doubts, those fears, the desire for love and safety for themselves, for their family, And what if we just have to learn how to express that in a more healthy way? That's what I'm talking about. So I'll leave you with that thought. Anybody want to say anything before we wrap it up here? Say goodbye.
Now, hi, Peter, and I'm sorry to say hi and goodbye at the same time. I've had a few phone calls, so I was taken away from you a few times, but I listened, and good. It's not a show, should I say? Good show, good workshop. So just say hi and good night, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Barb.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good night, everybody. I'm going to review this workshop and the last two over and over and over. I'm not sure I'm going to have the foundation for the next chapter, but I'm praying that I do because I need that forgiveness. Thanks, Paz.
Thanks, Dee Dee. Anybody else? All right, so remember, guys, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. And I want to hear about all your victories next week. All right, have a great week, guys.